We will stay live on these visuals in eThekwini, of course, where the council is currently voting for its new mayor. Lots of contention throughout the day with the IFP, the EFF and DA all raising concerns, especially when it comes to the headcount. That's because the ANC initially asked for an amendment, and we saw the ABC's Philani Mavundla being added to its list. That's after one of its own members apparently stepped down from the position. So it's been some horse trading behind the scenes.
It sounds like it, and I would imagine that this is a result of the IFP-ANC deal, which was struck last week. Basically, we'll support you where you've got more votes, and you do the same for us where we have more votes. Didn't hold. So the ANC is left, it seems, cobbling with lots of smaller parties, hence pushing for a deputy mayoral position for the ABC party. And I don't know the 1, 2, 3 of the ABC, I have to admit. It's a very small party.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's one of the popular parties in eThekwini, but of course, the ANC might have been desperate enough to actually have these last-minute talks so that they do eventually get a mayor into position, and then they, of course, appoint the deputy. But as we've seen this unfold, you can tell that the IFP, the EFF and DA are not happy with how all of this has unfolded. Important to point out, Sally, is that regardless of the ANC not getting a majority over the 50.1%, they still are the largest in terms of the numbers in this council. So they did have the most power when it came to who could become mayor and who couldn't.
And I think we can bring Dasen Thathiah in once more. So, Dasen, you've been keeping an eye on all of this. When is the mayoral vote going to happen? And is it at all clear who's likely to take it at this point?
Well, Sal, I think you would have caught just some of the visuals that I brought to you earlier on. I walked around this entire room now, just trying to get to Mxolisi Kaunda. That was the outgoing mayor, or possibly the incoming mayor, depending on what happens at the ballot. And just as I got to him, he quickly stopped me and said, look, I can't do any interviews right now, and I'll chat to you a bit later after the council meeting is over. But I just wanted to hear from him where his mind was at this point. You know that, broadly speaking, the ANC was worried in this metro. That was because of the loss of support, that they had Nicole Graham, a new contender coming in, possibly trying to snatch that mayoral title away from Kaunda. So she's the other contender there from the DA. Also coming in with the support of the IFP and some of the smaller political parties in this metro. The dynamics have changed considerably here between the last local government election and this one. And the reason for that is because you've got now parties like the EFF, which has grown significantly. You've got Action SA. You've got the DA kind of just staying around the mid-20s mark. But the gains for the smaller parties seem to have come from the loss of the ANC. The ANC was on a downward trajectory. So those two names are in the hat. Mxolisi Kaunda, Nicole Graham, which one is going to be victorious? We'll have to see. That voting process is just about wrapping up. So please bear with me, Sal. I might have to stop our conversation when this council meeting resumes. It hasn't just yet. Then when we talk about the deputy mayors, the IFP's Mdu and Kosi is a contender there. And then from the side of the ANC, possibly as a result of the arrangement that they've struck up with the ABC party. I heard you and Shahan having a conversation about that just now, about that small party. They have 2 seats here. And Philani Mavundla of that party being put forward as an EXCO member. So the ANC, in its submissions for the EXCO of the municipality, put his name in after the resignation of one of its members. That was one of the points of contention that we saw here earlier, where the other political parties were saying, but why would the ANC then put forward the name of someone in such a small party when the EXCO is meant to be comprised of the bigger parties in this municipality? So him, a potential candidate for deputy mayor there. All of this up in the air at this point, because ultimately it comes down to the number of votes in those boxes, and that process is just about ending shortly, it seems.
Yeah. So, Dasen, of course, the ANC needs 112 votes to actually get this position right. And as you mentioned, the IFP is upset with the ANC and might be actually voting in favor of the DA's candidate. So if you look at all of the numbers and the number of seats that are involved here, of course, the ANC has 95 seats out of 216. What are the DA's chances of getting this mayorship with the support of the IFP and other small parties?
Very good, Shahan. They have a very strong chance. Again, the only thing, I guess, that could stand in their way is just the way we've seen arrangements fall by the wayside here, leading up to the elections, after elections. We've heard political parties have discussions. We've heard about coalitions. We've heard about these arrangements, which they don't want to call coalitions, and all sorts of other things, which basically meant that political parties would work together to oust the ANC. But in this case, if they do, and if they stick to that arrangement, the ANC's Nicole Graham stands a very good chance. But as you would have seen today, that the ABC party, which also is one of those minority parties, you're actually looking at where the minorities are seated at the moment, he had then changed tact, and after conversations and whatever else that may have transpired, he has now joined over to the ANC, or is supporting the ANC seemingly, and that's why he's made it to the EXCO. So anything can happen at this point, but to answer your question in short, Shahan, certainly a good chance for Nicole Graham.
Yeah, and it looks like they might have just wrapped up the majority of voting. Is that process over? And obviously we know it's going to take some time for that counting to happen as well.
It looks like you are right that the process has just about wrapped up. I see that the queues have also stopped. This should take some time. It looks like we might be here for a bit. They started just about half an hour or so ago, but now is where the important bit comes to play. Shahan, this is what they've been trying to do since Monday, when we saw those interruptions at the Moses Mabhida Stadium tent before we got to the ICC. So I guess one has to be glad that there were no disruptions during the formal process of voting, and things have gone quite smoothly. Obviously, many more precautions being taken here today to ensure that these things happen. You'll see those boxes being emptied out there, some of the party agents gathered around the table. This is where it all comes together, Shahan, when we find out if we will be getting a new mayor or if we'll be keeping the same one.
And just talk to us while we watch those boxes being upended and everyone standing around as the counting is about to get underway, I would imagine. Talk to us about what happened a little earlier today. I mean, you know, it's a bit worrying. There was chaos on Monday. There was unhappiness today as well. We're going to actually just throw to those visuals and listen in a little bit. And if you can just tell us exactly what it was all about and whether it's been resolved, because if it hasn't, doesn't bode well for running eThekwini.
No, well, certainly one of the first interruptions was over the issue that I spoke to you about now, and that was where the ANC was insistent that they didn't want to proceed with today's proceedings until they were able to add that name to the EXCO. Now, that was very important because they say that one of their EXCO members had resigned. Remember, this was already decided on Monday, and then this change came about today. So it means that between Monday and today, that was when the resignation happened and when that list was submitted. So the IFP in particular saying that they would take the Speaker to court because they felt that this decision that was taken it wasn't legal. We can listen in, if you have that bite available, of the IFP's Du and Kosi just having an exchange with the Speaker on this very issue.
Let's take a listen.
Candidates, please don't interfere with the process. I address numbers are on screen. Numbers have been confirmed. Numbers are on the screen. What is what you because? All the candidates Numbers have been confirmed to the court. Numbers will be displayed on the screen, and then roll over the process to IEC. After numbers will confirm, court will proceed. Let me order councillors. Councillors, order councillors.
All right, so Dasen, looked a lot of unhappy people, a lot of shouting and screaming. IFP, you mentioned, threatened to take the Speaker to court if they went ahead with that suggestion to bring in the ABC person as a member of the EXCO. How is this resolved, or is it not fully resolved?
Well, the ruling was made, so it's gone ahead, and that has happened already. So the IFP then saying that, look, it's happened, but nevertheless it doesn't end here and it doesn't end today. In fact, they will have to still continue this conversation in court, and they want to find out exactly how it can be resolved there, because they still, I think, in the minds of the IFP and some of the other political parties, they agree that the ruling was made and they wanted to move forward with this process, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they were happy about it. In fact, I foresee that this is going to pop up in council meetings that will follow this one, because that has not been an issue that has been resolved. It has just been an issue that has been ruled on, and it was the Speaker that made that ruling on the advice of the legal advisor for the municipality, Mr. Malusi Mhlongo. So that's how that ultimately was, well, again, I can't say resolved, but that's how we moved past that here at this council sitting today. What you would have also seen was the headcount demand that was being made by both the IFP, the EFF, and some of the other parties as well, because they did not want to proceed with the voting until that headcount was done. So they wanted to ensure that they knew exactly who was in this room today and who would be voting, because there was a list of numbers that was put up on the screens that are next to the stage. Those numbers showed how many people are in the ANC, the DA, the EFF, and so on. But the parties said that they wanted to verify that that was in fact the case. That matter then being resolved by the Speaker saying that it was in fact happening, because there were officials that were stationed in each of these rows here, and they were in fact counting per block that was inside this building, and eventually that process fortunately was allowed to take place, and that settled down. So a lot quieter now. In fact, most of the people in this room have cleared out because of what you're seeing in front of you, which is the voting process. Just mainly the party agents that are there to ensure that everything is going according to plan and that there's nothing untoward.
Yeah, I would imagine that the IFP will make a decision on whether to take the legal action after the outcome of this vote, because it seems if it's the DA, then they probably won't have a problem, but if it's the ANC, they are going to have a problem. So, Dasen, let's talk about the IFP and ANC discussions, right? Because they reached an agreement. It wasn't a coalition agreement, but they did decide that they would support each other where one had the majority in a council. And when I spoke to the IFP's president last week, Nkosini Hlabisa, he said to me it was likely they were going to support the ANC in eThekwini given that agreement, but that has totally fallen apart. Let's unpack why.
No, that's right. I mean, they've completely reneged on that arrangement. And there's this use of language here, Shahan. It's not a coalition, but it's an arrangement. And that seems to have been the case not just in eThekwini, but in other councils in KwaZulu-Natal as well. So the IFP then opting not to support the ANC for whatever reasons it may be, but instead leaning towards the DA. But what I can tell you is that there seems to be a consensus amongst these parties parties. We did engage with a few of them during the course of today about what their reasons were for sticking together, and it seems that they are bound by this, and I say this, I use this term loosely, but this common enemy, which is the ANC. So although they may not necessarily agree with what the other party is offering, or what the policies from the other parties are, they are adamant that they want to not allow the ANC to govern this municipality in particular, this metro, the province's only metro, because they're talking about the track record here. Why, though, there's such a disconnect between what the leadership has said and what the councillors here have done? That is something that we certainly need to unpack further with these political parties, because there may be deeper reasons here as to why that arrangement has fallen apart after it was so publicly discussed with all of us.